Jesus is indeed the Son of God. He was God in the flesh. And then John gives us 7 miracles, and I didn't ask you to write those in. I just gave those to you. So let's look at that list there of the 7 miracles that John gives. The water to wine, the healing of the nobleman's son, the healing of the man with the infirmity at Bethesda, feeding of the 5,000, and Jesus walked on water, healing of the blind man, and the raising of Lazarus. And then, of course, the 7 I ams. Let's look in the Gospel of John at those, where Jesus gives those I ams. 6:35 is the first one. John 6:35. While you're turning there, let me go ahead and say we're going to continue for a couple more Sundays looking at other evidences that prove that Jesus is indeed God, was God in the flesh. We'll be looking at prophecy, how prophecy proves that. You know, Peter said we have a more sure word of prophecy. He was referring to the many prophecies that are given in the Old Testament relative to the coming of Jesus, especially the first coming. Then, of course, we know there are other, even the resurrection of Jesus that proved his divinity. The coming of the Holy Spirit, the pouring out of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. Again, that was evidence that Jesus was indeed the Son of God. So we'll be looking at some of those other evidences. Let's look at the I am, 6:35. But Jesus speaks. Okay, so I don't have that right, do I? I am the bread of life. That's what I'm looking for. Is that the right verse?
Yes,
Love.
It is right. 35, John 35.
Oh, it would help if I went to John. John and Luke just couldn't get together, could they? All right, 6:35, yes. Oh, I was scanning that. I thought, I know that's right. 6:35, and Jesus said unto them, what did Jesus say? Let's all read it together. I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. So the first I am is the bread of life. Then in chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus says again, 8:12, then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am what? The light of the world, and he that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So he is the light of the world. Then in 8:58, you should know this one. Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. And I talked about that title last Sunday, I am. Jesus was saying, I am the pre-existent one. Before Abraham ever lived, I existed. I am the covenant name. That's the covenant name of God. I was, I am, and I shall be. His pre-existent name, his covenant name. And then number 4, chapter 10, verse 11. I'm sure you figured that one out too. 10:11, Jesus says, I am the what? The good shepherd. Yes. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. And then in number 5, this is what Jesus said to Martha. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. Yes. And then in number 6, John 14:6. This is one of those scriptures you should have committed to memory. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. And then number 7 in chapter 15, Jesus said, I am the true vine. In closing, I want you to flip over to Acts chapter 9, and let's look at Paul's first sermon. You know, I enjoy hearing ministers tell about their first sermon. Oh, I don't recall who it was. Not too long ago, a seasoned pastor, and he said he remembered when he was called to preach as a young man, and he was going to preach in his home church, and he said, I worked hard and I prepared my sermon, and he said, I knew I had a good 45 minutes at least, 45 minutes to preach. And he said he got up to preach it and he finished it in 5 minutes. That was his first sermon. Well, have you ever thought about what was Paul's first sermon? Let's look at Paul's first sermon, chapter 9, verse 20. And straightway Paul preached Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. That was his first sermon. Jesus was indeed the Son of God. And that should be our first sermon. I want to encourage you. And sometimes when I begin to, in fact, in the middle of the night last night, I was lying there thinking about this, our lesson this morning, and thinking about our friends, the Jehovah's Witnesses, who are so deceived by false doctrine. And I felt so burdened for those very sincere followers of that false doctrine who come to our front doors. I encourage you, rather than peeking out the curtain to see who is that out there, oh, that's those Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm not going to open the door. We have a responsibility to open the front door. And I know what we all think. We think, oh, well, I'm not that familiar with their doctrine. Oh, I can't quote all those verses. I'm not sure where that verse is that Barbara told us we need to be sure and remember. If you just share about the love of Jesus and how there is only life in Jesus, and Jesus is the only way, you plant a seed there. You plant a seed. We have a responsibility to those people. You know, sometimes I think we have this attitude, Lord, I'll go where you want me to go. I'll do what you want me to do. Lord, whatever you say, I'll do it. Lord, here am I, send me. But, I don't want to open the front door to those Jehovah's Witnesses or those Mormons. Yes. Yes. See. Yes. Well, I think it's just because we feel unprepared and we feel like we can't defend our faith, and that is much to our shame if we can't defend our faith and what we believe. But if we just share with them that Jesus is the only way. Right, so go out on the front porch. Well, but you didn't let them come in. You talked to them out in the yard. Yeah, the young one was like, really? Yes. Oh, yes, indeed, they are a cult. Well, and they are a cult, that's true. But just know, bottom line is they deny the deity of Jesus, and they teach Jesus is a created being, and so therefore he is not to be worshipped. He was not resurrected bodily. He did not have a bodily resurrection. If you just remember those two things, and they teach that Jesus is a created being, and so therefore he is not to be worshipped. They say that Jesus is the Son of God and Mary, and that Mary was just one of God's many wives. But anyway, that's getting off in a lot of bizarre stuff there. But well, they may do it, but they just deny the deity of Jesus and say he is not to be worshipped. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Mark.
My aunt always said, "Come on in here. I've She says your religion is taking care of like 12 men at the Watchtower Track and Bible Society in New York, and 100 servants put out all the things that we believe, and they're all false.
And right, and that is another point that they teach, that they are saved by obedience to their doctrine and to the Watchtower. And they take the Watchtower magazine on equal ground with the Bible. And of course, they have their own New World Translation. In 1947 is when they did their own quote translation. It's not a true translation, to reflect their doctrine. For example, John 1:1, where in the King James, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that's a capital W. And then on in verse 14, John says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelled among us. Clearly talking about Jesus, presenting Jesus. The New World Translation says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was a God, lower G. So see, they're discounting there. So they have just deliberately penned their own Bible to reflect their doctrine. But if you just remember John 14:6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. If you remember John 14:6, and you ought to commit that to memory and have that ready. You don't have to, we can never win anyone by arguing with them. So don't feel like you've got to argue. You'll never win anybody that way. It's just as you plant a seed and ask the Holy Spirit to just rain on that seed and turn their hearts, even when they leave your front door. If that seed has been planted there, that gives them food for thought. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, right. They're always very nice. Right. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yes. But the thing is, we just need to be prepared wherever we are approached. Yes, by anyone who is not a believer. We need to be, I think that's one area where we have fallen down so much, is in knowing what we believe and why we believe it. We need to have scriptural basis we need to know the scriptural basis for our belief. All right, we must stop with this. Thank you so much for being here this morning, and you are dismissed. Don't forget, if you want a Bible reading guide, I have some here if you'd like one of these.
I'm not going to get in the choir.
Okay. Yeah, well, you've been out for quite a while, so you have no idea what... Oh, yes.
Well, I know the song.
Good morning.
This is the all-in
Oh.
DVD that